Liz, how you doing? Welcome to Tim and Sid.
Well, I'm just doing great, and I appreciate you guys thinking of the Post, and my coworker Will Hobson and I am happy to be with you.
Liz, thank you for coming on. How long did it take to get the journalism together on this? How long was the process?
Sure. Yeah, well, it was really two segments. So in the summer of 2018, that is when you might remember the New York Times had a breaking story on this team and the cheerleaders, basically selling access to their cheerleaders to close sales deals. So that summer, the Me Too concept was very much part of the conversation, and we had heard from a female employee of the team who described a situation of harassment and said it was fairly common. So we looked into it then. Several of the women had been forced to sign legal agreements here. We call them NDAs, that you can't speak about your employer after you leave, certainly not in a disparaging way. So there was just a lot of fear at that time, and understandable fear and constraints. So we kind of set it aside, didn't forget about it. And then maybe in the past month, 2 months, I can't recall. We heard from one or two more, and people were more willing to talk, and we were able to get some documents, and the conversations were difficult, but came a bit more easily than 2 years ago.
There is an aspect to the story that I don't think I've seen in journalism, certainly not lately. Other journalists cryptically talking about this story, promoting it before it came out, and it was really acknowledged by the Post. And there were some rumors that there may be some things in the story that weren't in it. Were there things that you found out that but you couldn't substantiate, or you weren't allowed to put in it because of legal reasons that would have added even more layers to what you did report?
No, I'm glad you touched this, because this is really a bitter terrain for me. No one at the Post promoted this story in advance or leaked. It wasn't teased or promoted. None of that came from us. A couple, maybe after we had the critical mass of reporting, we needed to go to the team for comment. The team initially said we don't comment on hearsay. So we brought them basically a full list of the people involved, and without telling us, but it's subsequently over that weekend, two scouts were fired, and nothing was said to link that to the work of the Washington Post. But that, I think, through sourcing of other reporters, not having anything to do with what we're doing, but they got to the bottom of at least why those guys were told they lost their jobs. I'm just trying to say the most outrageous wildfire of speculation, reckless speculation, was launched on social media about the bombshell coming from the Post. That, again, was nothing we started. I found it distressing beyond words. And every either reporter or blogger or people who aren't even bloggers seem to want to one-up one another in the sensationalistic claims that this story was going to produce. And one person even started throwing out names of people who would be in the story that were not in the story and were not even part of our inquiry. So it was the most gutting, sort of irresponsible, really regrettable thing I've ever seen. And it certainly did not serve our journalism. So no, there was no, we wrote the story we had planned to write all along, and we moved at the pace we could move when we got things confirmed. And this whole mania that preceded it was not our making, and it did not help anything. And in fact, I'd say it libeled a couple people, but anyway, that's the world we live in, at least live in pro sports in America.
Liz Clarke of the Washington Post here on Tim and Sid. So Liz, just to try and tie a bow on that, between Sunday night-ish, Monday morning-ish, and yesterday when the story was posted, all of that speculation you were talking about, was there a feeling internally at the Post, we got to move this a bit quicker? Was there any conversations, or were you guys working at your pace the entire time?
No, we were working our pace. I mean, there was a part of me that wanted to reply on social media, and but my better sense, we all agreed, just let the work speak for itself. Don't engage, just let the work speak for itself. But no, we were going to publish when we were ready. But these are complicated stories, and you have to fact check. We have lawyers at the paper who need to go over it. So there was an editing process. A lot of times, it's iterative. You have to kind of go back and double check something. So no, I was distressed just as a journalist because that's not what I like to see. And I was trying to block it out, but it did not have any bearing on the what was or wasn't included or the rate at which we produced it. I mean, obviously there were some people I saw on social media who completely misapprehended and said, well, what is this? That's not what I was promised. That's not what you teased. And that was not at all. That wasn't our doing. We were very pleased with writing the strongest story that we could. And I'm not saying we have uncovered the world, but there's plenty to give a team reasons to rethink its culture and do some apologizing, which has actually not happened to any of these young women yet, if ever.
I'm glad you said that. It hasn't. And reading the story, and this is very difficult work that you did, so thank you for doing it. But I was appalled. I was angry. But sadly, I wasn't surprised. And maybe that's the worst thing. You've covered the team for 8 years. This story spans 13 years. Dan Snyder has been in charge. He's had 10 different head coaches. But yet they don't have a working and functioning HR department.
Isn't that hard to believe?
It's unfathomable. What's the potential resolution that you'd like to see? Because I've heard promises of internal reviews before from this organization before, and we haven't seen the change. So what are you hoping change would look like after doing the hard work and the reporting?
Yeah. So, the optimist in me would say this is a moment of unprecedented change for this franchise. This comes at a time they are turning the page on so many things. They are going to change a name they have refused to change, for many, many years. They have brought in a new coach. They have gotten rid of their old president. The new staff, new beginning, new season, and this wake-up call. I shouldn't even say wake-up call. I mean, obviously, it's a culture that they've been aware of. It's implausible to me that any of this came as a shock. It is their own workplace culture where women were routinely harassed as if it's matter of fact, sent, grossly inappropriate text. People would, employees would upskirt them, stand at the bottom of a stairwell to look up their skirts, and the women learned, don't go near the stairwell. I mean, this was their daily working environment, just ridiculous. So ideally, they will have a vigorous, well-staffed professional HR department that makes all employees, male and female, feel safe to go with a workplace issue, that there's not going to be retribution. I think they really need to look hard at this whole requirement that everybody has to sign an NDA, this non-disclosure agreement that you can't talk about your employer when you leave. There are competitive reasons in technology for having NDAs. You can't go share company secrets, but in this case, it's used to silence people about poor treatment. So, sadly, the people victimized by this tend to be in their 20s. Young women might be making $30,000 a year. I mean, none of these women are in a position to file suit against a company worth $3.4 billion or, take on an NFL team. So there's a real unhealthy power imbalance, in all workplaces, frankly. But so that would be good. The coach is saying the right things. Ron Rivera, this is not going to be tolerated under my watch, and I take him on faith. But I've also seen so many good principled coaches come through that organization under Dan Snyder, whether that's Marty Schottenheimer, Mike Shanahan, Joe Gibbs, second iteration. So many are promised things and given this license to change the culture, and they cannot do it because they get undercut, and it just things are never delivered. So the constant in all this churn and disarray and hostile workplace, that's a toxic workplace, is the owner. And I don't see an epiphany on the owner's part. I don't see an awakening. He put out a statement today, saying the right word.
It was pretty weak, though.
Yeah, and notably, it used the word like unanimity, or so it had some good words in it, but it gave no acknowledgement of we apologize, we empathize with the treatment that these women got. We are committed to making them whole or learning about their experience. It was a very lawyerly, clinical, dispassionate statement that seemed to me to keep the NFL at bay, to send the signal to the league, it's under control, we're having our review. But, this is a very familiar play in their playbook. Their response was, we're going to have an outside counsel come do an internal review of this whole process. And then when, they were faced with the loss of $45 million in sponsorships because of a name that they had refused to change, they said they were going to have an internal review this month, actually, review of the name. So they have lots of reviews, and it always sounds good at the time, but I've not seen sustained, meaningful change in the culture of this organization.
We just, unfortunately, Liz, we just have a few minutes. But before we let you go, at times when a story like this goes to print and gets posted, the 24, 48 hours afterward is interesting in terms of maybe other people stepping forward with similar stories. Mm-hmm. Have you encountered that here?
Oh, yes, most definitely. And I've been surprised. I didn't really expect it, but no, I've been bombarded. I know Will has, my coworker has. Some from women just saying, thank you for giving voice to my experience. This is what happened to me, and I can't talk to you, but I thank you. Some from women who say, thank you for the story, but you barely scratched the surface. It's so much worse than you think. I signed an NDA and I can't talk to you, but keep going. So they're really, and I've heard from lawyers who want to talk about NDAs. Are they enforceable? There has been a great response, but also I think what you're getting at is a response that says this story doesn't end with 15 women. This was more the norm than the exception, for every female who worked in that building.
The Washington Post article is entitled From Dream Job to Nightmare. The byline is Will Hobson and our guest, Liz Clarke. Liz, again, to echo what Donovan said to you earlier, I want to thank you for your work on this. This was quite the read in a lot of ways. Disturbing, enlightening. I forgive me if I'm missing a word here to characterize it, but thank you for coming on today, and let's please talk again down the line. Have a good weekend.
You guys are so generous, and I really appreciated how well versed you are in this story and the issues. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Liz.
Thank you. Bye-bye.